Hi, guys. So, what we have here now, currently, I want to quickly break down some concepts about reviewing sonnet forms, the process you'll be going through as a critic. Okay? So, the starting point. This whole process starts with you and your observations. So the first phase, you are looking at the poem with a critical eye. You are, as a student, a critic of the literature. Consequently, as a result, you need to be sure to choose a lens from all that is available to you. All those lenses we've gone over, you need to pick which one you feel comfortable with using in these type of scenarios. Okay? It's always important to be sure you have a lens you're comfortable with before you actually do research. Now, what's going to happen either Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm going to walk you through the whole research process, the outside resources that you need to connect with your observations on that poem in the project PDF that we've discussed. Okay. Now, as a critic, you are viewing the sonnet. Okay. So the first step that needs to be processed, or the second step after you've chosen a lens, next you need to make sure that the poem you have in front of you is a sonnet. Okay. And then you need to determine what type of sonnet you have. So you want to first check, does it have 14 lines? Does it have a strict rhyme scheme? And determine what the rhyme scheme is, if it does exist. Determine if it has a consistent iambic pentameter in every line. If you have trouble with that, let me know and I'll help you with that. Most importantly, notice I made it bold. There has to be a volta in order for the poem to be a sonnet. Find the volta. And you will discuss the volta within your criticism. And as I said on the actual prompt itself, you look at the octave and the theme it presents, look at the sestet and the theme it presents. Are they communicating a parallel concept? Okay. So as a result, you do choose. Is it an Italian form, an English form, a blank form, or is it just totally experimental? It doesn't meet any quality of definition. You know it's a sonnet, but it doesn't fit any of the prescribed notions. Okay. Next, look at the relationship of the poet to the poet's speaker. Always remember, the poet and the poet speaker are not the same person. Poet speaker is a character that's being presented by the creative force of the poet or the author. And he or she's going to portray the speaker with various emotions and various reactions that generate a personality trait. For sonnets, the poet speaker does tend to be a little whiny. And you'll notice as we've been going along, some are more whiny than others. Okay, some are more flawed than others. Some you can only take for a few minutes of reading. Okay, so all that plays into your criticism and your observations of where the sonnet itself is going. What is the poet showing you about the poet speaker? What is the poet telling you specific about that poet speaker? Sometimes the poet speaker is an over-embellishment of the poet himself or herself. It does happen along those avenues, okay? So you get to decide. Is the I voice closely related to the poet, or is the I voice a fictional character who represents anybody, any lover, or any character in a moment of crisis. So once you've established that, look at the relationship of the poet-speaker now, the narrator, their relationship with the beloved. There's many ways to portray a beloved. There's many ways of portraying a sense of longing for a connection. Okay. So examine the development of the two main characters. How do they react to one another? How are they shown to be in a relationship, in other words? Are they both well-rounded characters? Do they both have a fleshed out concept of a personality trait? Or is only one of them represented? How do they see each other? If only one character is presented with a sense of personality, why is the poet-speaker targeting? Why is the poet targeting that character? Okay. So you can see how this analysis sort of blurs off of the previous category. Okay. The other thing of importance, in some situations, you always got to keep this in mind. The more realistic the relationship, the more the audience can connect to the poem. Okay? The audience wants to see and understand the story, the conflicts and the traumas that the poet speaker is going through. So, in a sense, the beloved is a part of the audience. Or to flip it another way, the audience, the reading audience, is a portion of the beloved. The whole point of a sonnet is to write down this creative expression and to give it to a love interest. Okay? So in that sense, the poet speakers symbolically, because of the poet's creation, keep that in mind, the poet speaker needs a reader. So that makes the poet speaker more realistic, which makes the poet's message stronger. Okay? So there's this ongoing relationship between these components, the poet, the reader, the characters. Now, even if you only have, in the case of the project you're working on, you only have one poem. In theory, it's supposed to come from a sequence of poems. Okay, so you got to look at the relationship of the poet to the full sequence. In this particular case, this step you would be skipping for the final project because you only have the one in front of you. Okay, you would look at how the poet is treating all the poems individually and how they operate as a collective. But in this case, you're skipping that step. Okay, just keep that in the back of your mind for future reference. Finally, you want to examine how the poet allows the audience to relate to the story. So this is taking this step where it says poet speaker to beloved / audience. This is taking it into a different level. You're looking at how the poet wants to, for lack of a better word, control the audience, how they want the audience to relate back to the story. What is being revealed to you within the story? Okay. What is the developing relationship? How are they perceived? Okay. Do you relate to the characters is what I'm basically coming down. Do you relate to these characters? Is the work successful? So in a manner of speaking, each one of these would be like a long academic paragraph. again, skipping the poet sonnet sequence. So you would have 1, 2, 3, 4 full paragraphs focusing on these elements. And don't forget your intro and conclusion. Okay. So that's a breakdown of where your observations are coming from. Okay. The sonnet itself doesn't meet the form. The poet, him or herself. The poet speaker, him or herself. The beloved, the audience. And the relationship of the poet speaker to the beloved, the relationship of the poet speaker to the audience, and the relationship of the poet to the audience. Okay. So I'm going to post this in a few seconds. If you have any questions, let me know. And of course, stay safe out there. And more details will be coming the rest of this week. See you soon.